Hey babe, are you a collectible book? Because you are fine.
Hello and welcome back to Hardy's Books. Today I'm sporting very proudly my new beanie that Laura lovingly made for me. She's incredible at crochet, as you may be able to tell from all the blankets that... Actually, there's no crochet blankets in frame. As you can tell from all the blankets that we have strewn around the living room. Anyway, that's enough about crochet. Let's talk about books, the real reason you're here. Now in the past, we've brushed upon the topic of today a few times, but today I want to go a little bit deeper into it, and that is the topic of book collecting. If you're new to book collecting, this is the video for you. If you have a bit of experience book collecting, I think a lot of the answers to these hows that I'm going to be going into in this episode will be, kind of maybe a bit old hat, things that you already know. What I kind of want to do is demystify the process of book collecting, demystify how we know how valuable a book is, kind of just, explain how people get rare books. Of course, there is going to be nothing as valuable to you if you are new to book collecting as just spending time doing it, getting practice, getting a feel for the market, feel for what books are worth. But hopefully, by going through some of these points, it should give you a little leg up and just a little advantage. I've been doing this now for about 4 years or so. I've had plenty of time in the market and I'm really learning quite a lot about the various values of different books. Naturally, there's always more to learn, but I wanted to share what I've learned so far. And if you have anything else to teach me, then do put it down in the comments. I want to find out more about book collecting and hear your best tips. So let's start with how on earth do book collectors find rare books? When you're a bookseller, there's a very easy answer to this question, which is that most booksellers buy books from people who are bringing their books to them to buy. So it's not all that mysterious. It's like by being well known and having a good reputation, people will offer their books to you for you to buy them. If you're just a book collector and if you're just getting into it, that's obviously not really going to be an option for you. Here are a few methods of finding books that you can try. The first place you want to check is your local charity shops, or if you're in the States, I guess it's called thrift stores. Obviously, the way that these shops get their stock is through donations. Now, a lot of the time that means that the things that are donated aren't necessarily very valuable, but there are occasions where people donate valuable books to thrift stores or charity shops in the full knowledge of how much those books are worth. And very often as well, because they're usually staffed by volunteers, that means that sometimes they go out on the shelves for perhaps a lower price than their market value. This means like 5% of the market value, things like that, which is, those times when you find those books for such a reduced price, they are thrilling, they are very exciting, and then there's the moral conundrum. It's like you feel like almost like you're taking money away from a charity. And so the way that I get around that is by making sure that if I find a book that's significantly below the market value in a charity shop and I buy it, I try to make sure that I donate a little bit extra money to that charity to make up for that discrepancy. Now, of course, this method takes time and you're not always going to get results. Laura and I go out to charity shops probably every weekend, and I'd say most weekends we don't come back with anything all that exciting. But for the few times we do, as you might have seen in our YouTube shorts, you can find some incredible things. So that's one to check out. Now, he doesn't get lunch. Why is he meowing? So that's in the real world. How about online? There are some obvious places to find books. And the one that is immediately going to come to most people's mind is eBay. eBay is a very good place to find books at reasonable, kind of around their market value. And if you see a book that's up for auction, then to be honest, if you really want to get a chance of getting it below market value and not getting caught in a bidding war, you probably have to resort to using sniping websites like BidSlammer. It's unfortunately a bit of a cruel game, but there's been so many times where it's been used against me. You kind of have to play the game, unfortunately, if you want to get any good deals. eBay is often also used as a marketplace for booksellers who are actually putting their books up above market value. Booksellers who make bookselling their whole career and are well established tend to put books above market value because the idea being that they have done the work to find the rare books, and so they can kind of put that kind of a little bit of a scarcity quotient on the price, being the accessibility of that book kind of allows it to afford a higher price. So don't always go by the price that you find on eBay. There are a number of other book marketplaces to try. Abe Books is another one, which again kind of falls into that same bracket of things being slightly higher above market value. Or you can look for online marketplaces with a bit of a more amateur appeal. So things like Facebook Marketplace, you tend to find a lot of bulk lots on Facebook Marketplace. You can then buy the bulk, keep the book you want, and then sell the bulk. And quite often you can make your money back that way. Then also in the UK and in the EU, you have places like Vinted, you have Gumtree, you have Shpock. Especially with Vinted, one of the best things about that one, you can actually save your searches and put them in your bookmarks, so you can always come back to them very easily at another time. Really, to be finding the best books, you have to become a little bit obsessed. Like to be honest, I check Vinted probably multiple times an hour, and I found some incredible deals on there. I just find it's one of my favorite places to buy books from. So I've now given that to you. It's now out in the world. My favorite place to buy books. I probably ruined it for myself. Never mind. One more place where you can buy those bulk lots is actually from auction houses. You can see a lot of these auction houses together in a place called the Sale Room. I don't know if this is just UK or whether it's US as well. A lot of my Terry Pratchett books I bought through forum auctions, which is also listed on the Sale Room. And those books, I made my money back and a bit of profit from keeping the ones I wanted and selling the ones I didn't want. Very often those bulk lots don't get a lot of competition and go for quite cheap. So that's how to find rare books. Now let's talk about, once you have a book, how to determine how rare that book is. And so first, let's look at first editions. There's an important thing to clarify when it comes to first editions, and that is the difference between a first edition and a first print or impression. So when a book is sold to a publisher, the first version of that book, is in the first design, the same number of pages, the typesetting, that book is called the first edition. A book being a first edition in itself doesn't necessarily mean that it's worth much. There are some exceptions, like for example Tolkien. Tolkien's first editions are always worth a lot of money, but it being the same of that design, of that manufacturing, doesn't necessarily mean that it's worth that much money. Most of the value of a book in regards to its version is contained in the print number of that book or the impression of that book. Basically, that means that once that edition was sent to press, the first time it came off the press, as in the first kind of like, I don't know, few thousand books that were done in that batch, that is called the first printing. Now you can have first printings of second editions, of third editions, of special editions, and very often those are still the ones that are worth the most money. And the important thing for you to know is how to identify when you have a first print. Now the hard thing about this is that there isn't really an accepted standard that is common among all publishers for how they label where or what print number their book is. There are a few methods that are used, so you're unlikely to find something completely alien, and I'm going to go through those methods now. So the first and most familiar one to book collectors is the strike line, or it's also invariably called the number line or the number run. The way that you can find this is if you look on the copyright page, there is often a line of numbers that are often from 1 to 10, sometimes in a different order. Usually they're in a chunk of 10 or a chunk of the next 10, so it'd be like 10 to 20 or 20 to 30 or whatever. It's the lowest number present on that line that dictates the print number. So if you see a number 1 present in that line, that means that it was a first print. It may be out of order. It very often is out of sequence. If the lowest number you see there is a 2, it's a second print. 3, third print, etc., etc. There are some American books I've seen where the first number I see is like 11 or 14 or whatever. Very often US editions seem to have more print iterations. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's a pattern that isn't actually a thing. It's just something I've noticed. Another method that is particularly used in kind of older books, perhaps pre-2000s, is that very often the impression will actually be listed. So you'll see first published in, and then the year, and then below that you'll get second impression, the year, third impression, the year. And you can see this very clearly in Tolkien, you can see it in the Gollancz, Terry Pratchett books. That basically spells it out, so there's no real kind of doubt as to what that is. So for example, here I have this copy of Equal Rights. This is a first edition, but if I go inside and I look at the copyright page, you can see that it says it's a 7th impression, January 1994. If in doubt as to whether your book is a first edition or not, you can always go on to a website called isfdb.org, and there you can look up the book title. You can see a crowdsourced list of all the different editions for that book and which year they were printed, what the ISBN for that book is, who did the illustrations on the cover. There's usually a pretty comprehensive list of editions here, so you can always check that out. So on some occasions, you might have a book that is a little bit odd. You might see that it's by a different publisher than was expected, or you might look at the back and there's no ISBN. And this is an important thing because sometimes a book might look like it might be worth something, but then it might turn out to be what is called a book club edition. What does that mean? Book clubs in this sense have kind of fallen a bit out of fashion now. Some of the biggest ones have shut their doors, but their books are still out in the world. These book clubs were essentially a club that you could join, and then you'd be a bit of a captive audience as these companies would then sell you these slightly cheaper production quality books at much larger print runs. Right here, I also have a very, very similar copy of Equal Rights, which looks quite the same, but there are a few differences. So this one is the copy that was published by Gollancz, and this one here is a copy that was published by Book Club Associates. For various reasons, book club editions are not really seen as valuable as true first editions or editions from the original publisher. One of those reasons is that the production quality tends to be a little bit lower. You can feel almost from the weight that these books haven't been made with the same thickness, or what's it called, the same GSM paper, using the same kind of like embossing or gilt or various things like that. Plus them being printed in larger quantities means that they are by nature more common. There are a few ways to identify if the book that you have is a book club edition. The first way, and the way that is going to give you the quickest indication, is to go onto the title page and to see who the publisher was. And in this case, my one says BCA, which means it is from Book Club Associates. So that is going to tell you immediately if your book is a book club book. There are a few other tells as well. Firstly, as I mentioned, a lot of book club books won't have ISBNs. This one is actually an exception. It does have the ISBN on the bottom, but above it, it has a CN number, which is a catalogue number. And then next to that is usually 4 to 7 digits, which is the number that is used in the references for book clubs. You can look at the spine. If the publisher logo is not present on the spine, or if it's the book club logo, then naturally that is a book club book. You can look at the inside dust jacket, and if it doesn't have a price on it, very often that means it's a book club book. You can check the size. Quite often book club books are smaller than the publisher copies. So yeah, that's a few tips for finding if your book is a book club edition or not. So despite book club editions perhaps not being worth as much to the market, that doesn't mean that they are inherently less collectible. If you're looking for a hardback copy of a book, then very often the book club edition can actually be the most affordable way of you getting that. And I have here this incredible copy of The Dragonbone Chair. This was published by Guild Publishing, which was another book club, and it is in absolute pristine condition. It is the same, roughly the same size and weight as the regular first edition, and it looks absolutely fantastic on my shelf. So just because it's a book club edition doesn't mean that it's terrible. I think this one, for instance, is beautiful. So once you've found your book, you've worked out what edition it is time to determine what condition the book is in. And of course, condition will have a rather large impact on the value of the book. Generally, books are classed from acceptable / poor, going up to good, then very good, then near fine, and then fine, and sometimes even new if it's still in cellophane. In book collecting, we don't tend to use the word mint. It's just not really in the parlance. What you're looking for when you're buying books is books that are in fine or near fine condition. If it's a significant book, then you could start looking at some of the conditions that are sort of below that on the scale. But of course, there are a few things to look at if you want to grade your book properly in terms of condition. And there are 3 components to this. There's the dust jacket, there are the boards, and then there are the leaves. So starting with the dust jacket. If your book doesn't have a dust jacket, then that means that unfortunately it's not going to be worth nearly as much as one that does. And that is because in the book collecting world, there's sort of seen as having an incomplete copy. The dust jacket is seen as much part of the book as the physical bit with the boards and the pages and all of that. If it's been under the sun for a while, red ink on the spine tends to fade, and that's either called fading or sunning. If there are tears, if they're the little kind of like what's called chipping around the edges where, you know, it's just become a little bit frayed or a little bit tatty. If it was given as a gift, very often the gift giver will have cut off the bit of the dust jacket that has the price on it, and that is called price clipping. That might affect the value as well. If your dust jacket is intact, if it is in pretty much as original condition with no sunning, with no chipping, no tears, then that is a really truly valuable thing to have, and you will find a lot of the value in the book will actually be in that dust jacket. But there are also things to consider around the boards. The boards are essentially the thick, non-flexible bit of the book. When you take off the dust jacket and look inside and look at the boards, if you see evidence of staining, then that can affect the value. Also, if there is bumping, which means basically if you've dropped the book and you can see the edges have become a little bit kind of creased. If the spine has become slightly loose or is less tight, then that can affect the value. When a book has been well read, often it can produce a spine lean. Spine lean is fixable to an extent, but it can affect the value with quite a heavy lean. Looking at the leaves is just the technical word that we use for the pages. When you look at the side of the book, if there is significant browning, or if there is evidence of these little brown spots, which is called foxing, then these things can also affect the value. If there are any tears, that can also have an impact. So once you've factored all these things into account, if you determine that your book doesn't really have any of those issues, then you can quite confidently class it as a fine book. If it has 1 or 2 of these issues, then maybe that's more of a near fine book, and then naturally going down until it looks a bit worse for wear. You can also go online and compare the quality of your book against other books and kind of make a determination as to what condition it's in. So you worked out what edition your book is, you worked out what condition it's in. Let's discover how much it's worth. There is really one way to do this that is superior to all the other ways, and that is simply to determine what the highest value it's sold for in the past. This is where our good friend eBay comes in again, because you can search on eBay under the sold listings for auctions that ended in the last 3 months. And there you could basically have a look and see, all right, okay, so what did this random person think that my book was worth? Tot them all up and find the highest one, and that is pretty much what we would call the market value of the book. Naturally, if a book is a little bit rarer, there is a chance you're not going to find it on there, which then means you have to do a little bit more digging. Make sure as well, when you're looking for the sold listings, that you are matching the condition and the print number, because these will have, as we've discussed, some impact on the value, and it doesn't necessarily mean that your book is as valuable as another one if it just looks the same. It needs to match the print number, it needs to match the condition. So there you go. That should give you a guide on how to, first of all, find rare books, how to determine how rare your book is, what edition it is, what condition it's in, and how much it is worth to the market. Spending more time in the market will also give you a better impression as to which books are more valuable than others. So maybe make a habit of just having a search of maybe 5 or 10 famous authors, maybe like every day, just having a look at what prices their books are going for. That's going to really give you a good idea of how much they're worth. And you can make this fun by choosing your favorite authors as well. And then who knows, maybe one day you'll find a little bargain and you'll snap that buy button and you'll feel incredibly good about your new item in your collection. So thank you. It's time for me to do the thing where I ask you to press that button down below, that like button, and next to it there's also a subscribe button. That's also a very good button to press. I hear good things happen when you press that button.
Really helps us out. We're really trying hard, and we're putting out content every week.
We're trying so hard. I'm going to show you our cat. Look at him. Look at him.
Hit that like and subscribe button.
And also check us out on other places like Instagram, where we are at Hardy's Books, TikTok, where we are at Hardy's Books. And we don't just collect books. As I mentioned, we also sell books. So you can see some of the amazing books we found by trawling the internet and through our hard work in charity shops by going over to hardysbooks.co.uk. And
we also buy books.
yes, and
So-
if you have books you want to show us where you're like, how much is this worth? Would you consider buying it? We would love to see them. So do send us an email. I think we're contact at hardysbooks.co.uk. Send us a pic. We want to see it. And we have...
Especially if it's a first edition of Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne.
Yes, we're in the market for John Gwynne. We're in the market
also in the
for...
market for some Martha Wells.
Martha Wells,
but
Murderbot.
Specifically the Murderbot's Diary.
We want the Murderbots. If you happen to have number 132 of Kingdoms of Death or Ashes of Man of the Sun Eater Saga, please let us know, because we would buy that from you as well. Okay, right, that's enough waffling. Have a lovely weekend, and actually, whenever you're watching this, have a lovely rest of the week, and we'll talk soon. Bye.